car. Everything's been sandblasted up underneath. To give you an idea how thin some spots of the fender is, we don't want to change this obviously, but some spots are thin, some aren't. That little divot is where it was rusty and just the sand peening it pushed it up. Pinhole, 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 pinhole. You can see they brazed all through this where they had pinholes before. The rest of the fender, good shape. Just something right up in this vicinity here, it was really weak. Same thing happened here when they sandblasted, the hole appeared. You can see they brazed it all up here before because of pinholes. These are all little pinholes from sandblasting the rust away. You can see it right on through. Tiny, tiny one right there. The rest of the fender, and even around these pinholes, pretty good shape. It's kind of sad. A little one there. So we'll get some clean brazing rod, warm that up. There's a little pinhole right there. So we'll get that. He's repairing. It's going to look ugly because of the welding soot and what have you, but and there's some rust proofing that burns away when he puts that in. He's repairing the rails. That one seat bracket, just too thin, kind of self-destructed.
See all the holes in it, the front pieces down.
You can see it's just thin as can be. It's got pinholes everywhere, all through here. The front flap that the wood attaches to is completely rotted away, as are these flanges. That's okay, they're under $1 million a piece, so we're good. So I already showed this. That all has to be cut away. So he's repairing the main structure. He'll be repairing that in there as well. And then we'll get floors popped in over there to a certain point. Then he's going to do the trailing arm support. And then we'll put floors in after that. And then they'll cut all this out, replace the bad stuff here. And we'll get some shots of that at that time. He's going to hog the rest of the paint so we can inspect this fender, but other than a few spots of Bondo, we think the fender is going to be okay. Okay, you can see debris here, trailing arm piece here. You got that reinforcement? Inside the frame, there's this real heavy steel reinforcement that mounts right there. Sets right, actually I gotta squeeze it just a touch. Sets right here. You reach up through these holes and weld those flanges. They have to tweak it just a little bit. Goes up inside the frame, and then this welds to the bottom on here. I'm sitting here talking about it, aiming the camera somewhere else. That doesn't work too good. So anyway,
8 o'clock in the morning.
so anyway, this goes here. All that's left of it are these tiny little flanges right there that I can break off with my fingertip. They reinforce this area, which is important because the rear spring is pulling down. This area is flexing all the time. So this really thick reinforcement strengthens this metal in this area. And it's obliterated. All up inside the frame, he said it's bad, all the way up inside. You can see the pieces of debris and how thin.
Yeah, a lot of it's this is the one that goes.
How thin and rusty
That's
the metal is.
That goes up.
This
right
goes
here.
up the curve.
Yep.
You can see how deep the pits are. This holds this entire rear axle in where it pivots and comes forward there. And that stud mount was welded to this thin of material here. It wasn't that thin, obviously, when the car was built, but there wasn't a lot holding that up, and this gives you an idea of the metal, how thin it is. And where it's thin, it's also pitted all to pieces, so the rest of that'll get torn out. The trailing arm and stuff put in. And we'll get a shot of the other side when he tackles that. He's going to finish up this side. Now, I already showed you the seat mount. This one here is pretty thin. But the rest of it is strong. We'll replace this flange back here. But the rest of this is pretty tough yet. The front lip is gone. We can add a lip on there. We don't always like to change these because this helps regulate where your seat goes, and you can see that it comes down at an angle. And so if we can repair the flanges on here and make them look decent, you're planning on leaving this one in, right?
Yeah,
we got to transfer this cage, so we'll just repair these small areas, and you know, the rest of it's pretty tough. The other side is kind of the same way. He'll know more when he gets the floors off the bottom of it, but we'll get some shots after he gets this changed. This side, the rails are replaced. We had to cut part of that fender off to even get up inside. That jack port that you see sticking down right there, back this off right there. This is what was left of his. So it's a whole lot more sturdy. All the metal here is completely rotted away. So there's a new one put in there. You can see all the rust we got to clean up over here. This is that inner fender. You can see Bondo oozing through the openings. Unfortunately, the whole bottom of this fender is perforated full of holes. I might just find or reject one of my patch panels. You can see this has been patched right here and across. This fender's been replaced at one time, but since that time there's been some damage here. They've patched it up and they left it not painted on the inside here. It's all full of rust holes. Bottom lip is pretty much rotted away. So you can see all the rust down here at the bottom and the holes at the bottom. All these holes here at the bottom. We gotta cut some more stuff out up in here. You can see these patches that he's been cutting away. He cut this patch off, and under it is just all kinds of rusty metal, and they really covered over top of this nasty stuff here. So we're gonna find out what we can do up in here, how much of this wheelhouse we can save, because you should be able to feel a lip under here, and obviously you can't. So we're gonna cut some of this stuff away, find out what's under it, make a determination whether or not we have to cut this panel off up higher to repair that, or whether we can just loosen it here at this pillar and pry it out enough to work up inside of there. We're not going to know that till we get a little more things cleaned up. So we got the rail in, firewall, trailing arm supports, seat cross member, rear axle, trailing arm, or jack ports up here. Trailing arm supports are back here. The reinforcement's been welded in, trailing arm up, welded in nicely, rear floor tacked in place. I'll finish that next week. They'll put a clamp of floor in here and build new brackets from that down. Put a new seat mount out here.
Seat mount's right there.
Yep. That'll set out here somewhere like that, and the new floor will attach to it, and this will push them in, drop into there, and this will weld to that floor here, and this will set down into the notch of the other floor. And then he'll build a little end here for there, because a wood floor sets down in here and has to screw in place. Get some shots of that next week when they get back at it. This is Friday. Is this the 4th? May 4th?
4th or the 5th.
Somewhere in that area. And then we'll tackle that side once this side's done. We'll determine. I thought we needed all the floors over there, but we'll find out. I think so. So we'll get back next week.
Before the one in that same black and blue.
Back on Michael's car. Had him hog off the rest of the paint back here. Rear quarter, lower is fine. Upper area is fine. We already know the wheelhouses in here are shot. But you can see that they've put a patch on here. Went around this, up through here, all the way to here. This shape isn't even quite right. In order to get into here, we have to cut this off right through here. We may end up changing this section. This is supposed to be straight back, so the stone guard is going to have to be checked for fit. We got pinholes all through here. So until we can cut this off and see what we got to work with, we got to look at this frame rail here in Jackport. It's going to do that probably next. Zip this off, take it loose from the pillar, cut it loose from in here so we can see what we got to work with. We know there's lots of patchwork in here. Some of it's going to be all trimmed away when we put the outer wheelhouse on. You can see a patch has been put right here, but we're going to live with that, clean it up a little bit. One of these quarters was put on years ago. This one here, who knows how many years ago. We showed you that already. That's all rusted out at the bottom. It was full of Bondo. The floors in here are put in. Just finishing up the welding. And then they'll tackle that side. We'll see how far back. Looks like you're going to have to go all the way back, doesn't it? Because you got to cut that floor out around that trailing arm support. And the floor goes on after the trailing arm support. So to get the trailing arm support out, you got to cut that whole edge of the floor off. And it's kind of weak. Aren't there pit holes through it in different spots?
Yeah, there is.
You see a lot of brass here. Going to find out what that's about. That jackport, very pitted. Is the end of that jackport rotted off like the other one was?
It ain't rotted off, but it's pretty bad.
So we won't know until we kind of clean up things a little bit and start cutting stuff out.
It's been well used.
So we'll get back in a few more hours. Customer would like a final kind of on what parts it needs, and we should know that later today. Okay, Michael's car. You can see they like brass. Patch this whole area here.
I thought it was Michael's wife's car.
It's her car, yeah.
Oh, okay.
I guess she kind of cringes when we do some of this stuff, but I can't help it. It's got to be done right. You can see that the patches that they did just go over top of rust, and the rust was just left behind. This is how the whole inside of the frame here looks. Now, Normally I would say we might be able to save this, but look how tissue paper thin the cross member is, and they added a piece to it, which they did, you know, pretty decent job of putting that on. It's just they left all this underneath to just continue rusting, and it's all eaten away here, part way here. So this has to go. The jack port, have you got that jack port you cut out?
Yeah.
Jack port was pretty nasty. There are holes, you know, corroded through it. You can see how deep the pits are in here.
How thin it is.
And they did some patchwork, but you see all the patches and the pieces they put on here. It would cost more to try and grind all that off when you have not a lot of good metal left. It costs more to grind all that off and try to clean it than it would to cut it out and put another one in. So it just doesn't make sense. Same thing with here. Now this frame rail, the lower, is rotted away here, quite pitted, rotted away here. Turns this corner, it's rotted away here, all the way up, and you can see where they did some patching here to try and save that, or cover it up. And you can see the thickness of the metal that we're dealing with. So this has to be cut out on up into here, probably up into here, chopped away. We do have these. So we gotta have an upper and lower here. This rail will go back to here. This frame rail here, we're gonna be changing, looks like pretty much all the way back. This cross member, we can save it. Very expensive cross member, by the way, and it doesn't, we can grind these flanges off and save them. These are holes, but we may have done that trying to cut the old stuff off because it doesn't look like.
Yeah, we did because it was.
Yeah, it was so much thick garbage on here. Yeah. You know, so this isn't a big deal. We can weld those right up because the metal's strong. We actually did these with the plasma cutter trying to get the old rusty stuff off.
Well, they had 3 layers of steel back there.
3 layers, yeah. You're gonna have to find out why they did this. Is the bottom of the rail here shot?
No, because
they patched it, or is this part of the floor they stuck on?
That's part of the floor they stuck on.
So they did the same thing up here,
all the way across. Yeah.
Okay.
That's what.
So if you don't want to try and grind this, we can take the torch, just start heating it, and it'll kind of pluck it right off of there. Torch is around the corner. We can heat that up and melt the brass. Now, once we get this corner here, and I keep ahead of you, I think you can just kind of peel it right off, and then we can wire brush the brass while it's hot and just kind of flick it on the floor. That's probably the way to do that, unless you want to just zip down with a cutoff wheel.
Well, I just ground this side. I got to clean it up.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to just whip down with a cutoff wheel, that will probably go pretty good too. We talked about this yesterday. I don't know if I filmed it. We got this loose here, but we literally have to come in here and cut this cross. It's reinforcement for the rear axle. We have to carve this out, but he's going to cut this away first so he can get in here better. This whole bracket has to be cut away. We have to build this whole new panel from here to here, and then on the other side to the other spring. You can see it's just perforated to pieces. So he's in the process of cutting this area out. I want to check on this cross member, see if I have one before you cut this away yet. So I want to go do that. And then otherwise avoid that if you can, but cut everything else out of there.
Right, yeah, I was going to leave that in place for a while.
And then we'll get some shots in a few more hours once we get a little more done. I'm sure it looks a little different here to all of you. The bottom rail was shot, and then trying to cut that out, finding the upper rail really rusty and had some patches and stuff on it. It was faster to cut the entire rail out. We already talked about the fact that that was all rotted away, had all kinds of patches, we showed that. This was pitted really badly, quite thin. You can see that it even crests and comes around the corner here. This is really, really thick metal. Thicker here than here, and you can see how thick that is. So we're going to put a new, knock this off. We'll put a new piece over top of here and out. You'll be getting an upper and lower rail. This is an aluminum pillar. You have to put a material kind of between this so that you don't get this electrolysis causing them to corrode. You can see all this white oxidization. That's the aluminum dissolving. And you can see in this pocket, we'll clear all this junk out of here and chip all this away and sand this up and paint it. You can see the corrosion here.
How bad are they?
We'll cut this out. What's that?
Those posts, are they really bad?
No, they're just white oxidization. Inside this hole here is a lot of junk.
Yeah.
See? But they're not rotted away, they're not broken off.
Yeah, they don't.
I've seen them a lot where I've seen this whole tab here and all of this missing on cars.
Yeah.
See how thick this is yet?
Yeah, it's still.
We're pretty good here.
Yeah.
We got to put a patch, see here? That big bulge?
Yeah.
He's got to cut that out.
Oh,
this is going to be...
a patch up here too.
Yeah, we got to cut this out because it's rusty behind that, bulged and broken. So we'll just have to probably cut up here and come right down to here. Put a bigger piece in. But he's going to put the two-piece rail in its entirety here, which is faster than trying to piece pieces in on that other rusty one. And you can see how much corrosion he's able to get at here and take care of.
I don't think we'll have to shim them.
Well, I just...
Every once in a while you have to shim them.
Yeah, you get electrolysis if you let the two dissimilar metals touch. So if we epoxy paint that really nice, doesn't he put a little caulk in between?
Right.
And then we keep these materials from touching. And that's what we've got. Over here, it didn't look so bad. You don't see bad electrolysis. You got a little bit of white. You can see that's like a putty that was left over from the factory. See, that side nowhere's near as bad. You can see they did some patchwork before us up here, but we were able to we'll grind that down a little better, but we were able to put pieces of a rail up inside. We got some welds to grind down. You can see the factory spot welded these together prior to installation. We like to put the upper rail in and paint the inside of it because the factory never used any primer or anything on these cars. So we go inside here and we rust proof these areas and spray them with stuff so that the corrosion will be stopped. You can see where pieces of patches were done under here, up in through here. This brass, we'll grind all that away. This here is the tunnel. This is a patch that somebody put on, went up here into here. We're going to cut that away because it didn't even reach the tunnel before. They made like a piece of a floor under here, so this will all be cut away. Back to here. This will be cleaned up and a new jack port butted up against it. That jack port comes out through the frame rail like you see there. We originally did not intend to put two new jack ports in here, but they just were so bad. The ends were all rotted away, and it takes more time to try and use an old rusty piece of junk than it does just to cut it off, put a new one in. The customer will be happier and the car will be stronger. And that way we're not trying to cobble anything up. You can see, cut this panel off here. The only way to really give us access inside of here is you have to remove it here and pull it out, or cut the panel off. And this panel was pretty bad on the bottom. These have been replaced at one time many years ago. And then this was all patched along the bottom. You can see it better now that they got it off. You can see what they did here. That big long patch. So many years ago the whole panel was changed, but then they patched the bottom of it here. And you can see, didn't even primer this. This is just all bare metal and all rusty. And this end here, they were welded together, so we had to cut them apart, so this end was lost. So we're gonna put a patch panel here, and this enables us to get inside all this rusty mess in here and change it. You can see the trailing arm under here has been patched now that I'm looking at it, because there's the original one. You can see there's virtually nothing left of it. I can bend it with my finger, and that's 14 gauge metal. Sorry, heavy 16 gauge. See the holes perforated through right there? Couldn't see that because there was a panel up here where there is supposed to be. There was a panel covering it, and this body panel on here, you couldn't see that the main upper part of the rail is rotted away. We'll cut this out back as far as we need to, and we'll replace that as well. But when we cut this away, you will have access to where we did on the other side, where you saw that reinforcement that goes up in here. This stud mount right here is known to rip loose, and you can see that being patched in that area at one time it did. They patched that. Hey Rob, they patched this with 20 gauge.
Yeah.
The trailing arm support. See this? There's your existing trailing arm support right there.
Yeah.
Up into here, and the holes in the main frame rail.
Yeah.
They patched that trailing arm area with 20 gauge. That's really dangerous.
I'm surprised it didn't rip off.
Well, we punched holes to the side of it. It wasn't long for this world.
Oh, yeah.
So this is not a big surprise, but just for video reference, what we've got.
It would be if that popped loose.
Oh, it'd be a big surprise if it popped loose, yeah. So I'm not sure if he may end up changing this cross member here, a little short one, but I know he's going to need a jack port. Did I give you the second jack port or not yet? Gonna need a jack port here, the 2-piece rail. We'll cut this out and repair that. But he's gonna tip this up, and we're gonna cut the trailing arm area out. Are you gonna attach the other side first?
We'll weld that rail together.
Yeah, but you're gonna replace the...
Put that rail and everything in and cut the top off of this. And replace the side of this and the stud mount and the trailing arm.
Yeah, but do you need to put a stud mount on the other side to support that rear axle, or did you do it already? Okay.
Well, that whole side's done.
So that side's done and the rear axle is supported, so we can actually take this one loose.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, we'll get back a few more hours. They got, I know it looks like we've cut more out than expected, but we did take more out than expected, but it'll make a much better job. Here's the debris field. You can see we sandblasted up in there because we had the cap off, but a lot of rust up inside here through those holes. And again, trying to piece it in takes longer. This is the condition. This used to be an 1/8 of an inch thick jack port, and I can crumble it in my hands. Push my finger through the side of it. This was an 1/8 of an inch thick. That's that long jack tube where you can actually jack the car up. And if you ever tried that, it would rip the whole fender off. Here is the extension of this. This might be from the other side. Yeah, this is from the other side. This is what they look like. 1/8 of an inch thick, just perforated full of holes. And this, which holds the rear axle in place, I showed you that before. This seat mount, they think they can save. If they can reasonably take that off and the metal's strong enough, then we'll save that. But you can see, this is inside that jack port where that...
that's the rear.
Where this is the rear?
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. That's why it doesn't pass through. So this is the front. This is the front.
We didn't cut that. That's all rotted on.
Yeah. So this is the front. You can see that that's the rear because it doesn't pass through. But you wouldn't want to jack the car up. That one's not an 1/8 inch thick. That's actually like 18 or 12, 14 gauge wrapped around a tube and then welded in. So obviously you wouldn't want to trust it. This, very deeply pitted, rotted through, patched over it with so many patches, it would take longer to try and clean them off. And then you're working with a rusty piece. And then here's what you had when the patches came off. So they just cut it out. This is the upper part of the rail where you can see it's all been patched and repaired, and it's all rusty inside. So that's why they went down the whole length and cut that off. This is even dented in. So anyway, there's the debris field. This is part of that frame rail. You can see how many layers of patches over the years that they've put on here. This is the original. This is who knows what. Probably part of the original flooring and frame cap. And this is a patch that they did. So we just couldn't use it. Alright, we'll get back later. Okay. Got the rear rail temporarily fit. They're going to use it, snug it in here temporarily till they get the jack port fit in and fit through the holes. Get everything cut and trimmed. Then they pull it out so they can weld it in all the way around. So you're going to put this back in with the jack port hanging off it, and then you'll weld it to the tunnel up there. Okay. And then you'll fit a patch panel on here after. We got to fix that wheelhouse first. Yep. But then we'll fit a patch panel on here after we do the wheelhouse, and then you'll line it up and weld the jack port on, so that it'll be in the right spot. Yep. Okay, we'll get back in a bit. Yeah, I don't get it. Back a quick one here on Mike's car. Jack port is in, side rail is in, front and upper. You made a piece for that upper? Yep. Okay. Upper is in. Seat cross member is in. This is in. It's got to repair the side wall of that. You can see all the holes through it. And that's important because that's the whole area that supports the rear axle.
That's where the
trailing arm mounts, yeah. So we'll get back in a bit. He's going to plug away here and actually set the floors in place soon and drop the firewall down to it and tack all that stuff in. He's got the trailing arm in. Got the trailing arm in and all welded in place. Reinforcement down inside of it that you can't see right now, but it's in there. This side will start going together pretty quick. He's cutting that. You're cutting that sheet metal that's all shot up in there out of the way. He's cutting that sheet metal under the cross member out of the way to build a patch for it. Try and get in there and piece that in. Back on Michael's car, the trailing arm we showed last time is in. Working on the rear floor. You got that cross member piece cut away, or you're working on that too?
That's once we flip it up on the side.
Okay. We'll get the front floor in a while. Then the trailing arm stud mounted underneath. And then we'll get some more shots. Back on the car here.
Watch the cord. Okay.
Firewall's not in, but we put that in after everything else is mounted. Then that drops down into the floor. Outer seat mount here is not in. Are you saving this one? One of these you were changing. You're changing both or just one?
Changing this side. We should be able to save this side.
Okay.
Look all together.
And then this is the nasty floor and tire wall assembly being trimmed out. And as we mentioned, we got to take the perforated sheet metal out from underneath the cross member out. He's got some more trimming to do here. Trimming back here. You can see all the holes, you can see daylight through it everywhere. Didn't notice this with all the tar and the goodies they had swept across this to cover it all. I'm gonna have to heat it up back here because it looks like they brazed it or welded it right to the tail panel. We'll be back in a few hours and see what progress we have. Trunk area is mostly cut out. A little bit of weld spots. You can see the tail panel there. Show you this piece in a minute, but you can see the areas that were so rusty, he had to cut virtually all of it till he hit good metal out. And even around that cross member down there. Even under it. See how far down he had to go. Where's the pieces that came out of it?
Some right there, some right there.
Oh yeah, there's pieces right here.
Ouch. That pretty much came off the piece.
Oh yeah, it was tissue paper. They already patched it with riveted patch before. Yeah, flip that one over. Yeah. So they'll finish that. He'll finish the welding here of that floor now that he can tip it up and clamp it, but he'll do it when he's putting this piece in. They'll go in there with a little blaster and get that all cleaned up, painted. Then they got to start making pieces for that. And he's got to cut the remainder of this area here out, up into here. You can even see how corroded it is even at the corners here. All right, so we'll give it another half a day or a day and we'll get back. Piece in wheelhouse in where it needs to go, so he's got new metal to work with. Is all this out, this setting in place? I think it's just kind of just jammed in. I'm not sure if I showed this, how rusty the inside of that actually is. Got that trimmed away. They got to make that piece yet. So he's going to fit this wheelhouse in first, get it clamped in place and trimmed down. And we'll get some shots of that later. We're outside of Michael's car. They're painting inside these cavities that were all rusty. They did that here before they put that plate on. And now they're getting like an epoxy paint here. This is installed. Painting the areas they couldn't get to before. So you're ready to pop all this stuff in here now?
Yeah. So I was trying to get done today.
So he's sandblasting up, and he already did that. You can see all the grit on the ground here. Sandblast the areas we couldn't get to before. You can see that he has all the floors, rails, seat mounts, everything installed, all welded in. Some grinding to do yet, but he's going to get the trunk floor, tire wells, and the back trunk floor welded in. He's repaired this. He's repaired this side wheelhouse. Again, we got a little grinding to do. But you can see it looks like it's supposed to, not like what it was where they had that all filled with metal. He's got to do this side here yet. You can see that this is just filled straight across instead of seeing the lip. So we'll have to pop those patches out of there and fix that correctly. So this is just before Memorial Weekend. So his goal is to get this in and assembled today, and then we'll hit back on it next week. Okay, you've got a lot of this all put in now. And the air compressor decided to turn on. Tire wells, fuel tank's been fit, so we know that it fits. You won't see this welded back through here because it's not supposed to be. It's supposed to be seam sealed with some urethane sealer, but not welded. leaves puckers and marks in the car body. So these have been installed, gas tank's been put in to fit, and they're making panels for in here to finish this off. You can see it's all been primer with an epoxy primer, all sealed. So, other than a variety of grinding, which is just totally fun, and I know he just can't stand the, he just can't help himself.
I got that kid's phone number, I'm gonna call him.
So, we'll get some shots here probably tomorrow or the next day after the grinding's done and to get ready to prime this up and paint it. Are both wheelhouse areas fixed now, or you got one more to go?
I gotta do that one. I'm trying to get that done today.
This one here? Okay. I'll get some shots later. Back on Michael's car. Pretty much all the welding is done. We've got a few little spots to touch up. That wheelhouse has been replaced. We saved the fender other than this little lower piece. He is grinding the welds down now. Some areas are harder to get into than others. He'll be finishing the grinding down that patch up here in the inside, welding the ends on for the bumper mounting. Again, getting into all these areas to grind it. But primarily the frame, undercarriage, and all that is all back together. Trunk floor area is all back together. You'll see plenty of areas that need to be ground, but it's all rebuilt now. Okay, now we took apart his heater core that he sent in, and I just pulled this valve. The heck of a thing was really stuck. Just pulled this valve out, and you can see, I don't know if you can see very well inside, but that core, you can see the tubes, but there's a very large amount of mud, corrosion and mud down inside that valve. So this will be going out today. I engraved his initials in the bottom. This will be going out today. It's a different person's core. This will be going out today. It's a different person's core. Actually, this is Michael's right side core. So I got to engrave that, and I got to pull that out. But you can see the well, 50 some 60 years old nearly. We'll get a shot down inside it. So isn't this Michael's core? Because that was the one the side plates were all knocked off of or taken off of.
Yeah, I got it.
So you're sandblasting the plates? Okay. Then this is the other one. This is for a different car. This is for a different car, a different guy's car. You can see that when it didn't come off, they just pulled it off and tore the flanges and everything all apart. This piece here that they damaged is not for Michael's car. It's a different car. But that piece there that they damaged is about 300 bucks. So we got to try and fix it. This is another core from a different vehicle that we got to pull apart now. This, I believe, is for Michael's car, and we're going to take it and use it so then when they solder it back together, this properly fits.
No, that's good part.
Fits on it. This one is?
Yeah.
Well, I'm taking it for use for all of these cars so we can make sure that the cores, when they're soldered back together, this has to slide over that. So this side plate that they put on with this, these ears are even bent. That side plate, when it goes back on there, this has to slide on there and the screws go in. This body has to slide on there and the screws go in. But this is the same thick size, so if I give him this one they can fit it on both ends and make sure that the core is back together, because there's nothing worse than getting the core all back and then your parts don't fit because they didn't know that the dimensions had to be just a certain amount. So, and especially when someone else has taken it apart and bent things or broke things, the poor guy putting the new core in isn't going to know what he's dealing with. So we try and help him out as much as possible. So this stuff will be going in today, along with a lot of this out of here is for Michael's car also. There's about 3 cars worth here that are going out for plating, and these will be plated yellow zinc. We realized that a few of the items in here, maybe 5%, are supposed to be black, but putting them all yellow zinc gives a good corrosion barrier, and then we'll paint them black afterwards. So we're going to go ahead and get them all zinc plated. Okay, well, this stuff here is, I believe, Michael's stuff here as well. And we got a new wiring harness in there for him. So, won't be too long. He's actually sandblasting to get the corrosion off with a little thing called a vacula. It vacuums up the material so you're not getting all that junk in your face. And they sandblast where the welds were so you can clean it better and paint stick better. And it gives them a better surface after he's done grinding. All right, got Michael's other core here, the right side. I shot some lube in there and freed it up enough to pull the core. But I want to show you down inside of here. This is exactly how we just pulled the core out. I don't know if the camera's catching this very well or not, but it is filled, I don't know what, 6 cans of stop leak or something? I don't know what's in there. You cannot see the core. I'll dump this out on the table. There's no way in the world that this thing functioned any way, shape, or form. It's still falling out. This is out of the inside of Michael's right-hand heater core. I'm not sure what this material fully is. You think that's partly stop leak?
Yeah.
I see copper grits in it. It's stop leak. It'll stop the leak and everything else. This is like, I don't know what it's like. Like dirt.
Like dirt.
Yeah. Let me see if I can see in there any longer. Down into the core. Okay. I can see the core tubes now. They're really, really plugged up. I don't think there's any hope to save this core. But they'll try. I mean, they'll boil it. Or they'll look inside and say it's a waste of time to boil it, and there's a company out of state that will custom make us these cores. They're not cheap, but they're still doing it. It's a lot of work to make these cores, so we may make like 6 of them at a time to save a little bit. And then they'll unsolder this out of there, put a new core in, and solder those plates back on. You sandblasted the plates here. They'll go back on, and like I said, when they put these on, they got to do it in such a way that this will still come on and bolt back on there. So we send them all the pieces, all the components, and make sure that they're put back together correctly. Then we will, when we get them back, we'll put new O-rings on the valve, clean that, emery paper that out, and put new O-rings on the valve before we reassemble them. Something Rob mentioned to me.
You want a plate though?
Yeah, something Rob mentioned to me that I didn't remember is the fact that these little levers here, of which there were some missing. I don't know if it was on Michael's or if it was on Tim's. But these little flip levers here are different, right and left. You can see the ear's a little different length. The notches are shaped differently, so they stop in different locations. We're going to plate these.
I think this is shot.
Along with the lever, huh? I can't tell when I look down inside there. Again, we're on a different person's video, but
I guess I'll cover them.
just duct tape over that little spot there when you sandblast, just in case we don't. In case you're able to save the core, it won't be so full of sand. Anyway, this is going in for plating. These cores are going in for refurbishing, replacing whatever is necessary, and we'll send all these little components out for plating. Michael's heater box is broken there and here. We're going to attempt, because someone has replaced this already, attempt to epoxy that and glue it back together and make it look halfway decent, because they're pretty expensive to replace. So we'll get back after a few more hours. Okay, fitting things on the car. A lot of grinding's been done. He's cleaning things up here and gonna. Are those his original rockers?
No, his are junk. These are a used set of yours.
Oh, so these are decent use set.
Yeah.
His were all cut off. We had to cut them off and everything else. Okay.
All this is all cut off.
All right. Well, I'll make sure I don't charge him for new ones then. All right. So he asked me to check his bumpers, and then maybe we could discuss replating. Well, you fit the bumpers to the car, so you're satisfied. Everything body-wise is decent. All right. Can you hold this up a little bit? I can't video, and I need a third arm. Okay. This is the plating on his bumper. Okay. The nickel. Someone did re-chrome this at one time. Okay. As you can see, the plating should not be like paint. I don't know if that's copper underneath of there. You see how pitted that looks?
Yeah.
It's almost like they took bare metal and buffed it and then plated over it. But the nickel, don't pay attention to the slice in the hand. That's what happens when a grinding wheel catches something and drives the grinder into your hand. You rearrange your flesh a little. This isn't bleeding because it burned it. It burned a big divot in it. Anyway, on to nickel. This is what is on his bumper. Everywhere there's little marks. If we grab it, the nickel peels right off. So we obviously can't leave them like this. Can you flip it over so we can kind of look at the bottom? The inside really needs to be blasted and cleaned up, but wasn't it all blistered on the bottom too? And
Yeah, a lot of spots over here. Right here.
as far as condition, here's the bottom of the guard. The plating's just falling off.
Right there's a bunch of blisters.
Here's the plating coming off here too, but not cracked yet. It's just all blistered. It's not sticking, and there's corrosion under it, so it's going to rust out the bumper. These bumperettes were all pitted, and they just plated right over the pitting. Might be able to have them stripped, and we can silver solder 2 spots up, but they've also buffed. There's supposed to be a crease down the center here, so this kind of comes to a point, and those are completely buffed away. Again, he wants a driver, not a show car, so I'm not so much worried about that as I am the shape. There's a dent right here and pitting all over. If we're going to re-chrome his bumpers, we got to do something with the bumperettes. The guards are decent. This area is supposed to be flat, and his are kind of rounded. We can probably strip these and then rework them. The bumpers are in decent shape. They're not full of dents. but the plating's coming off them, so they definitely going to have replating done. Same thing with this guard. I don't know if you can see in the reflection here. This is rounded from this point to this point. This is supposed to be flat, and you can see that they've been grinding on it. There's some dents left. I don't know how much material we have to work with or what they look like on the inside till we get them off.
It's cracked right there.
Yeah, but I'm gonna have them pop the guards off. You might as well take this apart because we gotta do something with it. We can't leave it like it is. Right. And where you can tap this flat, where you can take this roundness out, let's do that while the plating is on. It won't matter if we can do it. Doesn't have to be done today, but sometime next week. These have got to go to a plater because they have them for 2 months.
Right, we need them back so
we need them back so you can finish the body work. So you can finish if you want to keep these the way they are.
Well,
they don't alter them much when they're plated. No.
Because that'll really mess us up if it does. I know the rod guards we have.
The stone guards, they can warp those.
Yeah.
But the bumpers, very.
This is the other main thing was I know these things are thicker than this. These are looking pretty thin. Right.
Yeah, they've ground it very, very thin
but
here.
They're in pretty nice shape. So
they're in good shape. What I'll have them do is put just a little bit extra copper on them. It won't change your shape. This has a dent up on it too. Yeah, but see here, look what I can do with this bumper. I can bend this bumper that easy with my fingers. That means they have ground it quite thin. Because these are not quite twice that thick, aren't they?
Right.
Is this one as flimsy?
Yeah, well, it's flimsy, but not as bad as that one.
No, see that has more meat on it. Yeah, I'll have them just dip it in copper a little extra long. It'll stiffen it back up. Yeah, see this hasn't been beat all to heck and welded all up or any of that kind of stuff. This is actually...
all the mounts are in good shape.
Yeah, this one's slightly bent upwards. We can tap that back.
I had to cut this one and slice it so I could get the old thing out of it.
Oh, they welded the nut in place?
No, it was a regular nut. And the bolt
spins around, sure.
So it wouldn't come out of there.
Yeah. No, but these aren't...
No, they're not bad at all.
No, we sandblast these. If you need these for body work, then let's do it as fast as we can in there, and then I'll take them apart and have them plated. But you're going to be without them for 2 months, so I'd say get the body work done using what you have, and then we'll pop them apart and expedite the plating. The rear one, right here. Not so bad. This is, again, it's slightly rounded, but not the end of the world. This has a dent right in here. I don't know if you can see it in the reflection or not, but they're not really that bad. I mean, I think they're easily going to be able to be repaired. You can see imperfections in the plating where it's starting to come off. Customer's a little concerned that with everything else looking new, there's a crack right here in the bumper plating, and it's gonna start rusting right there. Condition of the bumpers themselves, though, are quite nice. Can you see in the picture, this is bent up in the air, probably a ½ an inch. That should be pushed down. You can see that kind of a bow. Minor, but it can't be left like that. You can see here, the plating just flakes right off with my fingernail. I gotta be careful because the plating is very sharp. It'll go right under your fingernail and stab you, but it's falling right off. Visually though, the inside of the bumpers, many times we find bumpers that have been sawed into and welded all up and hammered all to death. These have been, this is bent down here a little bit. That can be pried open. These have been ground on. That has been re-welded. but they're not in destroyed shape. Let's put it that way. This has been ground very, very, very thin. So that makes this very susceptible to being bent. So you can see how thin that is. Let me go up the side here. And you see how thick that is. This is how thick it's supposed to be. Like that. And when they find a dent, instead of hammering it and fixing it, many times they try to grind it or belt sand it out. It leaves your metal, in some cases, tissue paper thin. This is probably as thin as the sheet metal on the car. But if we put a little extra copper on here, they'll give them something to work with and it'll strengthen it up. Can you see me squeeze this bumper and flex it about 1/4 of an inch? You should never be able to do that with a healthy bumper. I can actually change the shape. So